All right, guys. Excuse me. Check, 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 check. Let's continue on with some biological psychology. Biological psychology. This one's called consciousness. This section is consciousness. So, an overview theories of consciousness. What is sleep? Functions of sleep. Brain structures involved in sleep. Sleep regulation. Sleep disorders. All right, so that's just the overview of what we'll be discussing. To begin, theories of consciousness. In this realm of biological psychology and the specific science, consciousness is hard to measure and define. Most attempts have shortcomings. The integrated information theory of consciousness, also known as the IITC, the integrated information theory of consciousness. Consciousness can be described as different levels. I guess so. There's like a sleep, a high. So consciousness can be described as different levels. So there's different levels of consciousness. For example, sleep, high, drunk, awake, hyper alert, dreamy levels of sleep. Are awake versus dreaming versus deep sleep versus a drug-induced state really different levels of one thing? So the global workspace theory of consciousness. Changes in consciousness involve vigilance and wakefulness. So vigilance is the action of keeping careful watch for possible danger or difficulties. So the integrated information theory of consciousness is the idea that consciousness can be described as different levels. And the global workspace theory of consciousness is that changes in consciousness involve vigilance or wakefulness. So default mode network, the DMN, default mode network, the DMN. This is the idea that the brain is active even when not actively doing anything. The idea that your brain never sleeps. When you're asleep, your brain is awake. That's considered to be the default mode network. Default mode network. Brain is active even when not actively doing anything. And the main parts of the DMN, the default mode network of the brain, prefrontal cortex, the PFC, posterior cingulate, and the angular gyrus. Things that change consciousness also change the default mode network. So here's a little example. Acupuncture, the default mode network, connectivity reduced in pain response. You know what acupuncture is, right? Put the needle in the skin. So the DMN connectivity, so we have a little column in rows right here. Got the activity, we got the effect on the default mode network. So the activity is acupuncture, and the effect on the DMN is the connectivity reduced in pain response. Meditation is the structural changes in the precuneus. Sleep deprivation is decreases in connectivity. So remember, when you sleep deprived, you have decreases in connectivity. Psychedelic usages or psychedelic usage reduce blood flow to the precuneus and the medial prefrontal cortex. Deep brain stimulation, rebalance restful brain structures. Psychotherapy changes default mode network activity in PTSD patients. Attention training techniques increases connectivity in the DMN. Antidepressant usage changes default mode network activity in PTSD patients. And physical activity and exercise changes the default mode network. Sort of brief. All right, so let's get to sleep. What is sleep? Sleep is a behavior, not absence of behavior. So it's like, well, I'm asleep, I'm not behaving at all. They're saying sleep is a behavior, not the absence of a behavior. Some scientists named Bremer showed that it is a coordinated activity from the brainstem. A coordinated activity from the brainstem, not the absence of activity. What are the functions of sleep? Memory, consolidation. There were some songbirds, some observation, a study with songbirds. So the functions of sleep are memory, consolidation. Wow. So the songbirds, they studied songbirds and they found that that playing their song during sleep, when scientists played the songbirds their song while they were asleep, during sleep, leads to activity that matches them practicing their song. So they measured their brain activity when they were up practicing their song. The same activity occurred in the brain when they were asleep and the scientists were playing their song out loud. So memory consolidation. So what they found, activity in the hippocampus during REM. So they found activity in the hippocampus during the REM sleep, which is the deepest level of sleep. It's the rapid eye movement sleep. It's where dreams occur. And they also found in this songbird study, amount of REM sleep increases after periods of training and learning. You can say, like, when you work your brain, when you train your brain, you read or you study, the amount of REM sleep increases after periods of training and learning. Interesting, right? So functions of sleep. Some more functions. Energy conservation. Energy conservation. We sleep to conserve energy. Species that sleep more tend to have higher metabolic rates. Species that sleep more tend to have higher metabolic rates. As we age, metabolism goes down, as does the amount of sleep. Some little notes I have right here, that even taking a nap has a rhythm. You have to train your body to take naps at a particular time. And if you do, your nap will get accustomed to that. And when you don't get that nap, it might affect you. Talks about learning a schedule. My professor said it's important to learn a schedule, the circadian rhythm. So other proposed functions: brain development in children and teens. Like another function of sleep. Another proposed function for sleep is the brain development in children and teens. Remember, we have memory consolidation, energy conservation, and brain development for younger people, children and teens. Sleep may be a safe place to discharge emotions and relief from stresses, possibly needed for physical health. Deep sleep is when human growth hormone is released in children and teens. Hence the sort of growing pains, remember? So deep sleep is when human growth hormone is released in children and teens. It's better to keep a rhythm. And sometimes there's sleep bonuses. If you are constantly maybe only getting 5 hours of sleep, maybe once a month sleep for a long time, there's been studies that show there's a bonus there. It's best to always maintain a rhythm. Sleep, the basics. So the basics of sleep. Stages of sleep. There's slow wave sleep. So slow wave sleep are both stages 1 and 2. Stages 1 and 2 of sleep are considered slow wave sleep. Mostly alpha, beta, and theta waves. Don't think that's important for the exam, but so light sleep is 1 and 2. There are K complexes in stage 2. I think that might be potassium complexes in stage 2. K complexes in stage 2 response to stimuli outside environment. Another idea of slow wave sleep is 3 and 4, mostly delta sleep. I think that might be a typo. Because it says deep sleep is between 3 and 4, but right here on the note it says slow wave sleep. I gotta ask my professor that. So slow wave sleep stages 1 through 2, mostly alpha, beta, and theta waves. K complexes in stage 2 response to stimuli outside the environment. Slow wave sleep stages 3 through 4, mostly delta waves. REM sleep, which is rapid eye movement, are beta and theta waves. Beta and theta waves. How do we progress through the stages at night? The first 4 hours contain more slow wave sleep, deep sleep. The first 4 hours of sleep contain more slow wave sleep. The second 4 hours contain more REM sleep. Rapid eye movement episodes, so REM episodes, occur approximately every 90 to 120 minutes. That's 2 hours, an hour and a half to an hour. Hour and a half to 2 hours. So rapid eye movement episodes occur approximately every 90 to 120 minutes. So REM equals dreaming, memory, and learning. So REM sleep is where we dream, but that sleep is for our memory and learning. Deep sleep is more for physical rejuvenation, maybe motor maintenance. So brain structures involved in sleep. 2 main circuits involved in arousal. 2 main circuits involved in arousal. One is focused on sleep. One is focused on wakefulness, waking up. There's something called, so this is the brain structures involved in sleep. One is focused on sleep. One is focused on waking up, consciousness, wakefulness. Not consciousness, waking up, wakefulness. There is something called the SCN, the suprachiasmatic nucleus. The suprachiasmatic nucleus appears to mediate between both sleep and wakefulness. And the SCN is located in the hypothalamus. So the suprachiasmatic nucleus, the SCN, appears to mediate between the two. So sort of kind of be the corpus callosum of the sleep structures, the brain structures of sleep. The SCN, which is in the hypothalamus, appears to mediate between the two, both sleep and wakefulness. Just a little side note, antidepressants kill REM sleep because serotonin prioritizes slow wave sleep, and antidepressants are serotonin reuptake inhibitors. They act like agonists for these receptors to allow more serotonin into the brain activity in the body and blood and the nervous system. So antidepressants kill REM sleep because the serotonin prioritizes slow wave sleep. And serotonin is one of the main chemicals within these antidepressants. All right, sleep structures. Sleep structures. There are low level sleep structures, slow wave, the Raphe nuclei. The Raphe nuclei is a sleep structure. And it's part of the pons. which is in the brainstem. So low-level structures, they are slow wave. One is the RAF nuclei, which is part of the pons. And there's something called the serotonergic network. The serotonergic network, part of serotonin release. Activity seems to be linked to slow wave 1 through 4 stage. So this low-level structures of sleep, slow wave RAF nuclei in the pons. There's a serotonergic, remember, it kind of sounds like serotonin, right? The serotonergic network, serotonin release. Activity seems to be linked to slow wave 1 through 4 stage sleep. REM, the gigantocellular tegmental field, which is part of the pons, as well as the RAF nuclei. This has to do with REM sleep, the gigantocellular tegmental field. That's part of REM, has to do with the pons. And it's acetylcholine based. Activity linked to REM sleep. Originates PGO waves, the ponto-geniculo-occipital, that occur with eye movements. So originates PGO waves, the ponto-geniculo, which ponto is pons, to the thalamus, the geniculate, geniculo, and then the occipital, that occur with eye movements. Originates PGO waves that occur with eye movements. So for the low-level structures, we have the RAF nuclei, which has to do with slow wave sleep. It's part of the pons as well. It's part of serotonin release. The serotonergic network activity seems to be linked to slow wave 1 through 4 stage sleep. And then we have the gigantocellular tegmental field, which also part of the pons, has to do with REM sleep. It's acetylcholine based. The RAF nuclei is serotonin based, but this gigantocellular tegmental field is acetylcholine based. Activity linked to REM sleep. Originates PGO waves, the pons to thalamus to occipital waves that occur with eye movements from the brainstem to the thalamus to the higher brain structure, which is the occipital. So the thalamus is the forebrain. More on brain structures. No, more on sleep structures. Now we're at the higher level structures. Right at the lower level, we were worried about the pons. We're focused more on the brainstem. Higher level structures, the preoptic area, which is part of the hypothalamus. Preoptic area receives serotonin from RAF nuclei, releases GABA to inhibit wakefulness structures, initiates sleep. So the high level structures, the preoptic area, the hypothalamus, receives serotonin from the RAF nuclei. It releases GABA. Remember, GABA is the main inhibitory neurotransmitter. So it releases GABA to inhibit wakefulness structures. So it wants to wake you up, right? It initiates sleep. So this the higher level structures of the brain that have to do with sleep. The preoptic area, hypothalamus, receives serotonin from the RAF nuclei, releases GABA, which is the main inhibitor neurotransmitter. It inhibits wakefulness structures. Remember, not too excited or too. It inhibits it. It stops the wakefulness structures and initiates sleep. So that's a sleep structure. Now we're going to be on wakefulness structures. Low-level structures for wakefulness. The locus coeruleus, which is also in the pons, linked to norepinephrine network. Activity linked to wakefulness. Remember, norepinephrine is linked to adrenaline. It's part of the catecholamine neurotransmitter family, I think. Let's go look. Yeah, the catecholamine family, norepinephrine, both activate sympathetic nervous system. Norepinephrine gives a milder, longer lasting increase, both physical and mental, attention, focus, and confidence, remember? So, of course, that would have to affect wakefulness. The low level structures of the wakefulness structures are the locus coeruleus, has to do with arousal, even panic attacks. And that's located in the pons, the locus coeruleus, linked to norepinephrine network activity linked to wakefulness. High level structures that have to do with the wakefulness structures is the posterior hypothalamus. The posterior hypothalamus, this is the area that inhibited by the preoptic that leads to sleep. So this is the area that is inhibited by the preoptic area that leads to sleep. Basal forebrain and thalamus likely also play a role in excitation of the cortical structures. It doesn't really say much about it. It just says, oh, this is the place that the preoptic nerve releases serotonin and able to inhibit sleep. I mean, to activate sleep. Inhibited, so this posterior hypothalamus is inhibited by the preoptic area. So it says it stops this posterior hypothalamus from doing its job. The preoptic nerve stops the posterior hypothalamus from activating wakefulness, which leads to sleep. But that's all it says. And then it just says the basal forebrain and thalamus likely also play a role in excitation of the cortical structures. Just saying wakefulness structures, one is the locus coeruleus, has to do with norepinephrine, and the higher level wakefulness structure is the posterior hypothalamus. So processes that regulate when we sleep. The circadian rhythms. The SCN is the likely center of circadian rhythms. Remember the suprachiasmatic network? Is that what it's called? Excuse me, I had to look for it. Yeah, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which appears to mediate between both sleep and wakefulness. So the suprachiasmatic nucleus is the likely center of circadian rhythms. The retino-hypothalamic tract sends info to it. Sounds like the retina, right? The retino-hypothalamic tract sends info to the suprachiasmatic nucleus. It allows light to play a role. Light. Processes that regulate when we sleep. Transplants of the suprachiasmatic nucleus establish donor rhythms in recipient animals. So they did something that, like, let's say they bred hamsters to only to have circadian rhythms that didn't consist in a 24-hour period, but 20-hour period. They transplanted that brain from another animal's body. They transplanted brains, and they realized that that's how they discovered that that the SCN lied, that the circadian rhythms are the likely center. No, that the suprachiasmatic nucleus is the most likely center of circadian rhythms, because they transplanted one SCN from one hamster that they bred to live within this 20-hour circadian rhythm to another untrained hamster, and they realized, oh shoot. So it lies somewhere, the SCN, the circadian rhythm lies somewhere in the SCN, because they transfer one SCN to a trained animal to another untrained animal's body, and they realize, oh shoot, we're getting the effects that it had in the previous body. And so the transplants of SCN establish donor rhythms in recipient animals. Retinohypothalamic tract sends info to it, allows for light to play a role. Transplants of SCN establish donor rhythms in recipient. So donor rhythms in recipient animals. Bred hamsters with 20-hour rhythms. SCN transferred into normal hamsters. Shorter cycles ensued. That's how they discover the SCN is the most likely center of the circadian rhythms. And the retinohypothalamic tract sends info to it, allows for light to play a role. So the suprachiasmatic nucleus, the SCN activity and light dark cycles. Because the SCN seems to be important. The SCN, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, is active during the day. So the SCN is active during the day in both diurnal and nocturnal animals. So diurnal is mostly like you and I. We sleep at night and we're up during the day. Nocturnal animals are up at night and sleep during the day. So the SCN is active both. The SCN is active during the day in both diurnal and nocturnal animals. The SCN, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, seems to tell animals whether it is day or night, but not cause specific behaviors. So it doesn't cause specific behaviors, but it tells animals whether it is day or night. It's linked to the pineal gland. The SCN seems to be linked to the pineal gland. Secretes melatonin. So the SCN seems to tell animals whether it is day or night, but not cause specific behaviors. And right here, my professor put linked to the pineal gland, but what is the specific behaviors or the SCN? I'm not sure. But it says linked to the pineal gland, secretes melatonin. Just keep going. Genetic links to the SCN, the suprachiasmatic nucleus. Light triggers the fluctuation of some proteins. Light triggers the fluctuation of some proteins. Increasing and decreasing various proteins leads to sleep-wake cycles. Processes that regulate when we sleep. Homeostatic debt. This is a theory. When not asleep, body gets tired with every waking moment. It creates a sleep pressure. The sleep pressure builds. So the homeostatic debt. It's a theory that says when not asleep, the body gets tired with every waking moment. It builds this sleep pressure. That's the homeostatic state or debt. The homeostatic debt we incur by being awake. So sleep pressure builds while you're awake until you need to sleep. Sleep pressure decreases while asleep. Glycogen equals the ATP reserves energy source. Glycogen equals ATP reserves energy source. As the brain uses energy, ATP turns into adenosine. Remember, that's found in caffeine. As the brain uses energy, ATP turns into adenosine. So glycogen equals ATP reserves energy source. Glycogen equals ATP reserves / energy source. As the brain uses energy, ATP turns into adenosine. Increased adenosine levels lead to slow wave sleep. Increased adenosine levels lead to slow wave sleep. Adenosine inhibits wakefulness structures. Glycogen levels build up during slow wave sleep. Glycogen is how the body stores sugar. Think about glucose, but glycogen is how the body stores that sugar. So glycogen equals ATP reserve / energy source. As the brain uses energy, ATP turns into adenosine. Increased adenosine levels lead to slow wave sleep. Adenosine inhibits wakefulness structures. Glycogen levels build up during slow wave sleep. All right, sleep disorders. Insomnia, unable to breathe. No, that's different. Insomnia, sleep disorders, insomnia. There's different types of insomnia. There's onset insomnia and there's maintenance insomnia. I forgot what those even mean, but bet I would remember. All right, sleep disorders, insomnia, usually treated with GABA agonists, benzodiazepines, or melatonin agonists. So treated with by medication with GABA medication. Remember, GABA is the main inhibitory neurotransmitter. So you want to inhibit sleep. You want to make sure, because insomnia is unable to sleep, right? So you need to give it a GABA inhibitor agonist that will work for sleep, right? Melatonin agonists. So usually treated with GABA agonists. You want to inhibit maybe that the certain like dopamine or norepinephrine. Want to inhibit these neurotransmitters and chemicals that will allow your body to want to stay up, right? So you got to inhibit them. So you use an inhibitor agonist, like a benzodiazepine or a melatonin agonist. Creating more melatonin allows for sleep to occur. There's also sleep apnea, unable to breathe while sleeping. There is obstructive versus central sleep apnea. Obstructive equals physical obstruction. I say a lot of that has to do with people who are obese or overweight. Something in their breathing, the path of breathing is affected. So that's an obstructive sleep apnea. That's a physical obstruction that's causing sleep apnea. And then there's central sleep apnea. It equals brain signal issue. There's a brain signal issue with sleep apnea. Two types of sleep apnea, obstructive versus central. Obstructive is the physical obstruction of being able to maybe breathe, not being able to breathe while sleeping. Also, the central sleep apnea is brain signal issue. So for the physical obstruction, something happening in throat or airway. Most of the time, the first option of treatment for sleep apnea is losing weight. The second option is a CPAP, like a breathing machine while you're sleeping. And that the acronym for CPAP is continuing positive air pressure. Some other sleep disorders, narcolepsy. So narcolepsy, excessive daytime sleepiness, cataplexy, paralysis, and hallucinations. So the individual with narcolepsy enters REM sleep at inappropriate times, both throughout the day and nighttime cycles. So narcolepsy. So we had insomnia. There's two types. Usually treated with GABA agonists because we were trying to get them to go to sleep. And we have sleep apnea, obstructive versus central. Obstructive is the physical obstruction. Central equals brain signal issues of sleep apnea. Another sleep disorder is narcolepsy, excessive daytime sleepiness, cataplexy, paralysis, and hallucinations. The individual enters REM sleep at inappropriate times, both throughout the day and nighttime cycles. What causes some of the causes of narcolepsy? Low hypocretin, low hypocretin levels, low hypocretin levels, possibly due to autoimmune issues. And so what helps with narcolepsy, amphetamines help narcolepsy, so they stay up. We could call it a glutamate inhibitor, no, a glutamate agonist, a glutamate. It's not an inhibitor, it's an excitatory. A glutamate neurotransmitter. Causes of narcolepsy: low hypocretin levels, possibly due to autoimmune diseases. Genetic link is possible. Brain injuries. Brain injuries to REM and wakefulness areas. So brain injuries to REM and wake. They're thinking that another cause of narcolepsy is a brain injury to the REM, the rapid eye movement, and wakefulness areas. Some others, another sleep disorder is some other sleep disorders have to do with the circadian rhythm. So the circadian rhythm disorders, issues when your suprachiasmatic nucleus and the light-dark cycle in the environment don't align. Remember, the SCN seems the likely center of the circadian rhythm. So it's a circadian rhythm disorder. So issues when your SCN and the light-dark cycles in the environment don't align. Advanced sleep-wake phase disorder. Falls asleep too early and wakes up too early. That's another one. Advanced sleep-wake phase disorder. Falls asleep too early and wakes up too early. Another one, delayed sleep-wake phase disorder. The opposite. Falls asleep and wakes up too late. So advanced sleep-wake phase disorder, falls asleep too early. Some people fall asleep at 6 and wake up like at 2 in the morning. Some people fall asleep late at night and wake up too late. So these are advanced sleep-wake phase disorder and then delayed sleep-wake phase disorder. I think advanced, we'll say too early, and then delayed, too late. These are circadian rhythm disorders. All right, and then we have a diagram to finish off this section. It's called Sleep Matching Activity Handout. The Sleep Matching Activity Handout. For each of the following brain areas and neurotransmitters, match them to the appropriate phase of consciousness. Answers should either be wakefulness, slow wave sleep, and deep sleep. So brain area, neurotransmitter, and type of sleep. So the RAF nuclei, that has to do with slow wave sleep. I think that was also part of the lower brain structure. Yeah, the low level sleep structure is a RAF nuclei. That has to do with slow wave sleep. The locus coeruleus, that is also a low level structure. That has to do with wakefulness. That has to do with wakefulness. So right here in my notes, I'm going to put low level structure. And the gigantocellular tegmental field, that is also a low level structure. And that has to do with deep sleep. It's REM sleep, right? So call that deep sleep. And then we have the preoptic area of the hypothalamus. That is a higher level structure. And that has to do with wakefulness. Well, no, it says slow wave sleep. Though it's a sleep structure. How do you know it's slow wave though? Well, slow wave would 1 through 4 stage. It's not REM, right? So that's slow wave. Posterior hypothalamus, higher level structure. There's a wakefulness. Yeah, wakefulness. Serotonin, the neurotransmitter. Slow wave sleep neurotransmitter. Serotonin is a slow wave sleep neurotransmitter. Acetylcholine has to do with deep sleep. REM, right? Yep, that's deep sleep. That's the gigantocellular tegmental field in the pons, which has to do with REM sleep. Acetylcholine based activity linked to REM sleep. Norepinephrine, wakefulness. Remember, sort of a attention and focus. It's part of the catecholamine dopamine family. It's wakefulness. So the RAF nuclei, slow wave sleep, locus coeruleus, wakefulness, gigantocellular tegmental field, deep sleep, preoptic area of the hypothalamus, slow wave sleep, posterior hypothalamus, wakefulness, serotonin, slow wave sleep, acetylcholine, deep sleep, norepinephrine, wakefulness.